For a Module 4, approaches about the school curriculum. It is a curriculum is viewed in different perspective. It is often viewed in three grand views as a content, a process, and a product. The curriculum also undergoes development and produces models which become the basis of educational institution. This module was designed to help learners understand these approaches and analyze this process and models.
Learning outcomes. These learning outcomes will serve as a guide to the students if they understand the topic well. At the end of this topic, the students will be able to identify the different approaches to school curriculum, explain by examples how the approaches clarify the definition of curriculum, reflect on how the three approaches interrelate with each other, and last is explain and summarize the curriculum development process and models.
Approaches to the school curriculum can be approached or seen in three ways. It can be defined as content, a process, or an outcome. If you examine the definition provided by the expert in the field, there are three ways of approaching a curriculum. First is to approach it as a content or a body of a knowledge to be transmitted. Second is to approach it as a product of a learning outcomes design desired of a learners. Third is to approach it as a process of what actually happens in the classroom when the curriculum is practiced. There are, in the learning outcomes, curriculum is viewed in many ways as either a content, a process, or a product. There are three ways of approaching a curriculum. First one is the curriculum as a content or body of knowledge. It is quite common for traditionalists to equate the curriculum to a topic outline, subject matter, or a concept to be included in the syllabus or books. For example, a primary school mathematics curriculum consists of topic on addition, multiplication, subtraction, division, distance, weight, and many more. For another example is in secondary school science that involves the study of biological science, physical science, environmental science, and earth science. It also the focus of a curriculum as a content is the body of knowledge to be transmitted to students using appropriate teaching method. There can be a likelihood that teaching will be limited to the acquisition of facts, concept, and principle of the subject matter. However, the content or subject matter can also be taken as a means to an end. All curricula have content regardless of their design or models. In most educational setting, curriculum is anchored on a body of knowledge or discipline. There are four ways of presenting the content in the curriculum. First one is topical approach, concept approach, thematic approach, and modular approach. In the topical approach, where much content is based on knowledge and experience are included. In topical approach, you can parang nagdadagdag ka ng idea based on your knowledge and experience. For the concept approach, which fewer topics in cluster around major and subject and their interaction with relatedness emphasized. Thematic approach as a combination of a concept that develop conceptual structure and the module approach that leads the complete units of instruction. Module approach, parang nung online class, they give the module for you to review, limited review, limited na pag-aaralan mo kasi module siya na binigay.
Criteria in the selection of content. First is significance. Content should contribute to ideas, concept, principles, and generalization that should attain the overall purpose of the curriculum. It is significant if content becomes the means of developing cognitive, affective, or psychomotor skills of the learner. Next is the validity. It is the authenticity of the subject matter, forms its validity, knowledge becomes obsolete
with the fast-changing times. Thus, there is a need for a validity check and verification at a regular interval, because content which may be valid in its original form may not continue to be valid in the current times. Next is the utility. Usefulness of the content in the curriculum is relative to the learners who are going to use this. Utility can be relative to time. It may have been useful in the past, but may not be useful now or in the future. The next one is learnability. The complexity of the content should be within the range of experiences of the learners. This is based on the psychological principles of learning. Appropriate organization of content standards and sequencing of contents are two basic principles that would influence learnability. Fifth one is feasibility. Can the subject content be learned within the time allowed, resources available, expertise of the teachers, and the nature of the learners? Are there content of learning which can be learned beyond the formal teaching learning engagement? Are there opportunities provided to learn this? Sixth is the interest. It will the learners take interest in the content. Why? Are the contents meaningful? What value will the contents have in the present and future life of the learners? Interest is one of the driving forces for students to learn better. So, interest dito daw nagkakaroon or tumatakbo kung paano iintindihin ng estudyante yung tinuturo mo. For example, yung bagay pa na yon is makakatulong sa kanila. So, bigyan nyo sila ng interest for them to focus on what you are teaching.
So, in the guide and selection of the content in the curriculum, we have the valuable in meeting the needs and competencies of the future career. So, dapat yung nilalaman ng curriculum natin is kinakailangan din para ma-meet natin kung ano yung mga kailangan ng mga estudyante natin ngayon or in the future. The next one is related to other subject fields or discipline for complementation and integration. So, when we say integration, it is the action or process of successfully joining ideas. So, meron kasi yung mga subjects or lessons na nangangailangan din ng backup from other subjects in order for it to be complete at para mas maintindihan ng mga estudyante. So, the last one is, it is important in the transfer of learning to the other disciplines. We have the basic principles of curriculum content. In 1952, Palma proposed the principle of BASIC as a guide in addressing content in the curriculum. BASIC refers to B, balance, A, articulation, S, sequence, I, integration, and C, for continuity. In organizing content or putting together subject matter, these principles are useful as a guide. So, the first principle is balance. Balance is a content should be fairly distributed in depth and breadth. So, it is important for us to have our content not too much and also not too little. Next is articulation. As the content complexity progresses with education levels, vertically or horizontally across the same discipline, smooth connections or bridging should be provided. It is to make sure that there is no gaps or overlaps in the content. The third one is the sequence. The logical arrangement of the content refers to the sequence or order. So the sequence should be vertically or horizontally. If we say vertically, it is to deepening the content, and if we say horizontally, it is to broadening the same content. The next one is integration. Content in the curriculum does not stand alone or in isolation. So as we have said a while ago, that integration is the joining or putting together of ideas. So a content should not be standalone. So as I have said a while ago, that there are some lessons that are needed to be backed up by another lesson in order for it to be complete and to better understand by the students. And the last one is the continuity.
Content when viewed as a curriculum should continuously flow as it was before to where it is now and where it will be in the future. So our content should not stop. It should be continuous for us to better improve our curriculum and to gain more information in order for us to add it in our content and to have a better curriculum.
Curriculum as a process. Here, curriculum is not seen as a physical thing or a noun, but as a verb or an action. It is the interaction among the teachers, students, and content. As a process, curriculum happens in the classroom as the questions asked by the teacher and learning activities engaged in by the student. It is an active process with emphasis on the context in which the process occurs. Used in analogy of the recipe in a cookbook, a recipe is the content while the ways of cooking is a process. Curriculum is a term that is used to describe the educational content and experiences that students have in a particular subject or program. Instead of thinking of it as a physical thing, it is often thought of as a process or action. This means that curriculum happens in the classroom through the interactions and activities that take place between teachers, students, and the material being taught. For example, a teacher may ask questions to elicit student thinking, or students may engage in group work or hands-on activities. These interactions and activities are what make up the curriculum and shape the learning experience for students. In summary, curriculum is considered an active process that happens in the classroom that shapes the learning experience of the students through the interactions, activities, and context of the teaching learning environment.
We have also the guiding principles of curriculum process. Number 1 is the curriculum process in the form of teaching. Methods or strategies are means to achieve the end. Because we all know that in a curriculum, teaching methods or strategies are critical for students to understand the topic, such as using supported materials to deliver the lesson properly and for the students to understand the topic. And teaching methods have a significant impact because they are used to assist students in achieving learning outcomes. So what are those effective methods? So for example there are materials which is available to deliver the lesson properly, such as PowerPoint, lesson, books, modules, and so on. At kung mapapansin natin na sa mga teachers natin is may different strategy sila kung paano nila i-deliver yung lesson kasi naniniwala na sila na in the way na mas gagamitin nila yung strategy na yon is matututo yung mga estudyante. Number 2 is there is no single best process or method. Its effectiveness will depend on the desired learning outcomes, the learners, support materials, and the teachers. Learning outcomes, kung saan yung learning outcomes is na-achieve man ng mga estudyante at the end of the lesson because it will measure the students' learning if they effectively learn from the lesson. The learners, if they are effectively learning and adapting the lesson. Support materials that are being used for the teachers to deliver the lesson are either print or non-print materials such as books, modules, charts, and electronic illustrations, and facilities such as audiovisual rooms and so on, which is very helpful for the students and the teacher on how they teach and what strategies or methods they use to have an effective learning process. Number 3 is curriculum process should stimulate the learner's desire to develop the cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains in each individual. Because a curriculum that deals with the experiences of the learners inside the classroom, whether positive or negative, will benefits their progress and allows them to develop their cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains. They will be able to improve their cognitive abilities in terms of how they think, solve problems, understand, and interpret situations. They will be able to develop their affective, which deals with their emotions, such as their behavior if changes or improvements are required. They will be able to develop their psychomotor domains, which deal with their performance, For example, students will be able to perform a skill-related fitness such as running or jogging. Number 4, in the choice of methods, learning and teaching styles should be considered. As an example, in curriculum process number 1, we mention teaching styles. And it is especially important in a curriculum process where every teacher requires a teaching style in order for a discussion to be effective for students to learn. Teachers may be aware of their own teaching styles, which can help them improve their teaching methods by developing their course to boost student engagement and essentially achieve better student outcomes. Number 5. Every method or process should result to learning outcomes, which can be described as cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. In our previous example of the curriculum process, we mentioned learning outcomes that must be met at the end of the lesson in order to measure students' learning, because those methods or process are linked to learning outcomes that can be classified as cognitive, or determining, explaining, and discussing, or affective, which others focusing on feelings, values, appreciation, motivation, and attitudes, as a psychomotor activity such as performing. And number 6, flexibility in the use of the process or methods should be considered. An effective process will always result in learning outcomes because the two are connected to each other, and if the process is effective, the learning outcomes will be achieved. Number 7. Both teaching and learning are the two important processes in the implementation of the curriculum, because if we have a facilitator, we also have a student. If they are a person who shares ideas and thoughts, they are also a person who adopts those ideas. If we have an instructor, then others will also be learned. Number 3. Curriculum as a product. Besides viewing curriculum as content that is to be transmitted or process that gives action using the content, it has also been viewed as a product. Alam naman natin na ang content is yung nilalaman ng isang module. Na kung mapapansin natin, bago ang learning content is meron munang introduction, which is the overview of what our lesson will all about. Next is our learning outcomes that must be achieved in the end of the lesson. And after that is we have the learning content, which these three are connected to each other. And the product is what students want to accomplish as learning outcomes, because we know that this learning outcomes is very important in determining whether or not the students understand the lesson. And this curriculum product will assist students in being equipped with the knowledge, skills, and values needed to function effectively and efficiently. As we mentioned in our guides, learning outcomes include cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains, which deal with bringing significant changes in the student's pattern of behavior, which is in our affective. If the process is not successful, no learning outcomes will be achieved. However, if it is successful, we can say that the person had a meaningful experience in the curriculum. The teaching methods may also be organized and the results evaluated. All of these are outcomes of curriculum planning, content, and process.